Emma Sterling had lived most of her life in the fast lane. At only 32, she was the brilliant CEO of Sterling Enterprises, a technology empire that had made her one of the most respected women in the corporate world. She had the looks, the brains, and the commanding presence that could silence a boardroom with just one glance. But 2 years ago, fate had intervened in the cruelest way. A car crash had left her paralyzed from the waist down, confined to a wheelchair. The physical pain had faded with time, but the emotional scars remained. Emma had once been a woman who loved laughing, who loved dancing, who believed in love stories and fairy tales. Now she lived in a quiet routine. Board meetings, conference calls, long nights spent in her penthouse overlooking the city skyline. She had more money than she could ever spend, more recognition than most people dreamed of, and yet her world felt empty. She had stopped smiling. Her best friend Clara was the only one who refused to let her sink into that silence. Clara was vibrant, full of energy, always talking about possibilities. One evening, Clara came into Emma's office unannounced, tossing her coat onto the couch and sitting opposite her friend. "Emma, I can't watch you live like this anymore," she said bluntly. "You need something other than work. You need to feel alive again." Emma didn't even look up from her laptop. "I'm alive, Clara. I have responsibilities and work keeps me busy." "No, you're surviving," Clara argued, leaning forward. "There's a difference. You've closed your heart. You won't even give anyone a chance. Don't you miss being in love?" Emma's chest tightened. Love was something she didn't let herself think about anymore. The accident had taken away her sense of freedom, and she couldn't imagine anyone choosing her, someone who could no longer run, dance, or walk beside them. "That part of my life is over," Emma whispered. Clara crossed her arms with a mischievous glint in her eyes. "We'll see about that. I've arranged a blind date for you tomorrow night." Emma froze. "You what?" "You heard me. A blind date at Bellanotte, that Italian restaurant you love." "Don't give me that look, Emma. You're going." "I won't take no for an answer." Emma sighed heavily, rubbing her temples. "Clara, this is ridiculous. I don't want pity. Whoever this man is, he's probably expecting some glamorous, perfect woman. Not," she gestured bitterly toward her wheelchair, "this." Clara's voice softened. "He's expecting you. And maybe, just maybe, you'll be surprised." Emma reluctantly agreed, mostly because Clara wouldn't stop nagging otherwise. But she was already preparing herself for disappointment. Blind dates were awkward enough. For her, they were torture. The next evening, Emma dressed carefully. She chose a sleek black dress that made her feel confident and elegant. Her makeup was flawless, her hair styled in soft waves that framed her delicate features. She looked powerful, beautiful even, but as she stared at herself in the mirror, she still felt broken inside. Bellanotte was warm and inviting, its candlelit tables and soft violin music, creating the perfect atmosphere for romance. Emma was escorted to a quiet corner table, her wheelchair gliding smoothly across the floor. She ordered a glass of wine, waiting nervously. Every time the door opened, her heart skipped. Who would walk in? Would he look disappointed when he saw her? Would he try to hide his pity? At exactly 7 o'clock, the door opened again. Emma's breath caught when she saw a tall man in simple jeans and a navy blue shirt walk in. He looked out of place in the elegant restaurant, his hands rough, his boots worn. He scanned the room until his eyes landed on her table. Then he smiled. Emma blinked. This was her date. Clara had set her up with a mechanic. He had grease stains under his nails, a few scars on his arms, and yet his smile was warm, genuine in a way she hadn't seen in years. He walked over confidently and extended his hand. "You must be Emma," he said, his voice deep but gentle. "I'm Jake." Emma hesitated before shaking his hand. "Yes, Emma Sterling." Jake pulled out the chair across from her and sat down casually. He didn't stare at her wheelchair, didn't flinch, didn't even let his gaze linger. He just looked into her eyes as if nothing else mattered. "You look nervous," he said with a small grin. Emma lifted her glass of wine, hiding behind it. "Blind dates aren't really my thing." "Mine either," Jake admitted. "But a good friend convinced me." Emma raised an eyebrow. "Clara?" Jake laughed. "Yeah, she said you needed someone to make you laugh again." Emma's lips parted slightly. Clara had told him that. Embarrassment flushed her cheeks. But Jake's sincerity made it hard to stay annoyed. The conversation started cautiously. Small talk about the restaurant, the food, the city. But as the minutes passed, Emma found herself laughing, really laughing, at Jake's stories from the garage. He spoke about fixing cars for people who couldn't afford new ones, about how he loved bringing old engines back to life. His passion was simple but contagious. "You really love what you do," Emma said softly, surprised by how much she meant it. "Yeah," Jake shrugged. "Engines are honest. If something's broken, you fix it. People are more complicated, but worth it." He looked at her meaningfully, and Emma's heart skipped. For the first time in years, she felt seen, not as the paralyzed CEO, not as a symbol of tragedy, but simply as Emma. The evening flew by. Hours felt like minutes. When Jake walked her to her car, he didn't offer pitying assistance. He simply held the door open, treating her with respect and patience. Before leaving, he said, "I had a good time tonight. Would you like to do this again?" Emma hesitated. The old fears crept in, the fear of being a burden, of being rejected when reality sank in. But Jake's eyes held no judgment, only kindness. Slowly, she nodded. "I'd like that." Over the weeks that followed, Emma and Jake began seeing each other regularly. Their worlds couldn't have been more different. She lived in penthouses and negotiated million-dollar deals. He worked long hours in a garage, his hands always stained with oil. Yet when they were together, none of that mattered. They shared pizza boxes on the hood of his truck, stargazed from the rooftop of her building, laughed until their sides hurt over silly jokes. Jake never treated her like she was fragile. If anything, he challenged her. When Emma complained about not being able to do something, Jake would grin and say, "Who says you can't? Let's figure it out." He built her a custom hand control system for her car so she could drive again. He encouraged her to join him at local community events, where she met people who didn't care about her title or her chair. For the first time since the accident, Emma felt alive. She was rediscovering parts of herself she thought were gone forever. And most importantly, she was smiling again. But not everyone approved. Some of Emma's colleagues whispered about her new relationship. A CEO dating a mechanic? It was scandalous in their world of luxury and prestige. Even her board of directors expressed concerns, hinting that her personal choices could damage the company's reputation. One evening, Emma confronted Jake about it. "People think we don't belong together," she admitted, her voice trembling. "They think you're not enough for me." Jake's jaw tightened. "And what do you think?" Emma looked at him, tears brimming in her eyes. "I think you're the first person who's made me feel like myself again, and I don't care what anyone else thinks." Jake pulled her close, pressing his forehead against hers. "Then neither do I." Their bond only grew stronger. Where Emma had once seen herself as broken, Jake helped her see her strength. Where Jake had once felt like an ordinary man with no place in a glamorous world, Emma showed him that his heart and honesty made him extraordinary. Months later, Emma gave a speech at a major corporate event. Cameras flashed, reporters scribbled notes, but Emma's gaze found Jake standing quietly at the back of the room, smiling at her with pride. For the first time in 2 years, Emma spoke not just as a CEO, but as a woman who had found hope again. "Life doesn't always go as planned," she said, her voice steady. "Sometimes we face challenges that break us, but sometimes in the most unexpected places, we find someone who reminds us that we're still whole." I thought I'd never smile again, but I was wrong. Her eyes sparkled as they locked with Jake's, and she smiled radiantly, beautifully, fearlessly. The blind date, that was supposed to be a disaster, had become the turning point of her life. The mechanic had walked in, and Emma Sterling, the paralyzed CEO who thought her story was over, discovered it was only just beginning.